The queen quickly claimed that he would aid the siege rather than take over, as Leani's aunt had been leading it for a week now and had made some progress. Not that Leani minded. What she did mind was the fact her mother had burdened her with the task of acting as chaperone to Jason. Their drive, as he called it, towards the capital started early in the morning, after he had spent the last evening after the audience with the queen, testing the limits of his powers, much to her annoyance. But they finally found some limits. Not that it mattered to her, as even with the limit of line of sight and non-living entities, and lastly it seemed to place a bit of a strain on his mind, he still made a few hundred different weapons and equipment, and even more carriages and some giants which he promptly dismissed before the city lost its collective minds, before he dismissed them all, claiming a headache. By the time he was done, the only way she could let all of this go was by reminding herself that she was the one who allowed this to happen. She was limited in magic, and the only school that she had a good connection with destroying her plans yet again. But he was constantly glancing at her as he drove. His expression looked concerned. "What is it, Jason?" She finally asked, her morning rituals a bit interrupted by him insisting they get going, leaving her a bit more agitated than normal. "Well, I think I may have done something wrong, so I am sorry. I forgot to tell you when I wanted to leave," he said in an apologetic tone, making her look over to him, his eyes that had no mana looking at her every few seconds for barely a second. "It's fine. I'm just tired from yesterday, that is all," she said back. After all, he was now her mother's pawn, not hers. He never was hers, really, and she didn't need his apology. Beast of burden, excrement. There is more to this, and you aren't telling me. Look, if it is some royal thing, then just say so. But at the same time, we have only known each other a day, so I get it, but—" he said, then moved the carriage over, before turning completely to face her. "Don't forget you summoned me. You are literally the person I have spent the most time with, and while we may or may not be friends, I know battlefields. So tell me why you are in such a pissy mood. You have been like this since yesterday before we left the village. So what the lower planes is going on?" She looked at him, her rage at the turns her plans had taken cleared now after a night's rest. If he had been bonded, then she could just told him to stay out of her business. But he wasn't. He was a free and independent creature she had summoned. Moreover, she couldn't handle this by scolding him like a male of her kind. She was not more powerful than him. On top of that, if she did, he might just leave and allow her nation to fall. But her rage was mostly pointed to his crazy way of utilizing her power. But the look in his eyes right now broke her. That look of pity and compassion, that accursed look she got from the butlers and knights of the palace, the same look she gets from most who learn about her limits. You are the problem. You were meant to be a knight or paladin, some kind of warrior of skill and honor, a master swordsman or powerful sorcerer, but instead I got a woodsman who somehow knows how to use the equipment of the militaries of his world. A scholar who found a hole in my magic that allows him to make monsters and weapons that your world has thought up in the fever dreams of mad alchemists and troubadours. She ranted off, her annoyance at the long day of watching him make things that are not weapons, yet he found the ways to make them so, and by extension create them regardless. You were meant to be my ticket to winning over my mother to make me the crown princess. Instead, I am your gods' abandoned chaperone, and any chance I had for the throne dashed with you. And I will remain as the only daughter that can only use summoning magic and mundane spells. A stain on the royal family, she said, and pulled herself up into a curl, hugging her legs, teeth gritted tight to try not to cry. Happy? No, I am not, he said, then turned and started to make the carriage move again. I didn't think that was the issue. If it matters, I'm sorry. But if you want the throne, then just stay close. I will make your name be the one the soldiers I train cheer. If you want the throne, then I will give it to you, but only because you are the one that gave me a second chance at life. She looked over at him. His eyes, or what she could see, looked pained. Did she really hurt him somehow? Some way of punching under his armor and wounding him? As for the woodsman comment, you got it wrong. In my nation, we have a few different types of soldiers. I am a ranger, which is an elite form of a soldier in the army. My job was to find the enemy and fight them. We conducted raids and assaults on enemy fortifications. We would rescue allies from enemies that had taken my people, and we were the ones that led the way for the rest of the army. And while we do know how to skulk in the woods like madmen, we are not idiots. She took in the information. It sounded like a scout mixed with the tasks of a knight and women at arms, along with a strategist. How could the word ranger ever mean that to him? Also, considering everything you saw me make last night, I haven't even gone through the whole list of things I want to try and make, but the fact I know how to kill in so many ways is because I am very well trained, but not just from my time in the army, but because of my childhood. I had to claw, kick, scream, and bite for everything I had. And my only refuge from the harsh and unforgiving home my father made was in the books and stories and games I read, played, or spoke to others about. He glanced over to her. So no, I am not happy. I am close to killing all your siblings and aunts and mother just to seat you up on that throne, just because I know how it feels to be abandoned. Leani saw it, something she had not seen before, not the pity or compassion of a person looking down on her, but a man who was looking upwards beside her. She couldn't make sense of this feeling she had, her heart's pounding in rapid fire, and her cheeks felt hot. "You would really give me the throne if I put my trust in you?" she asked slowly. "Yes, because I trust you not to try and sexual coupling me over. And if that is what you want, then I will get it for you, as long as you can let me chill the lower planes out in the palace after," he said as he started accelerating. Leani wasn't sure what he meant by some of those words, but if she would get the throne, she didn't care. "If that is what you want, then you will have it if you place me on the throne." She wiped away her few tears as she spoke after a few deep breaths. "So we are going as aides, which sort of means we can't really do much. However, I am sure if we can do something impressive, my aunt will let us do something greater, hopefully." Jason seemed to think it over as the carriage rocked over the last hill and the city at siege beyond. "How about we just blow up the gates and go back?" he said after stopping the carriage as they were told to do. "Can you do that? The gate is reinforced iron and needs magic to move," she said. "Iron gate versus one of the 60 weapons I can think of that will do the trick," he said with a wide, reassuring grin, then turned his face out the window as 3 riders were approaching. "Can you talk with them? Make it easier?" She looked over and climbed out, taking a few steps forward. The 3 riders were all knights of her people. She could make out the heraldry of her aunt, the 3rd princess, and the Baroness Juilan. "Greetings. I am the 16th Princess Leani Tricks. I am accompanied by Jason Coleman of the United States Rangers. We have been ordered by Her Majesty the Queen to come and lend aid to my aunt in her grand siege," Leani said in the most regal voice she could muster, while seemingly towering over the riders, even without their height advantage due to her posture. "You will escort us to her tent where I will tell her exactly how we will help." One of the riders, one she recognized as soon as she spoke, was her aunt's swordmaster. "A woodsman and the dull princess came to help with a siege. What will you do, summon us some trees?" the woman said in a tone that Leani hated. Not because it was disrespectful. It was because that was the tone almost everyone she had ever interacted with had when they spoke with her. "Is this your refusal to follow Her Majesty's orders?" Leani asked, maintaining the same tone she had. The 3 riders shifted a bit. Her jab at them basically committing treason unsettled them. She locked her eye back on the swordmaster. "As for me, I am the princess that had brought a powerful warrior from a realm that has no magic, and as such he can't be blocked by magic. He is a ranger, not a woodsman. He is a leader of armies, destroyer of his enemies, and wielder of weapons even you can't resist. Now escort us, or I will let him force his way to his objective." The swordmaster looked over and snickered. "Yeah, sure, I bet he can't even do anything. We will escort you so your aunt can send you away in the disgrace you are," she said, and wheeled her mount and started back down the path, followed by her 2 fellow riders, as Leani climbed back into the carriage. "Jason, change of plan. Destroy the gate as soon as you can after we arrive," Leani said with a bit of anger as she glared at her aunt's swordmaster and got a better idea. "Actually, can you destroy the gatehouse?" Jason stopped the carriage and looked over, a confused look on his face before he spoke. "Your mother asked us for help. Why would we destroy the gatehouse? Just the gate would be fine, no?" "Yes, it would be, but I want to wipe that dumb lazy's face clean when she sees how powerful you are," Leani said with a growing grin. "Besides," That way you can flex to an army worth of women that don't want to be here anymore, and we get to make a name for both of us." She watched as he started to think it over, then shifted in the carriage, half climbing out the middle through the roof, and a door she had not noticed. She leaned over and noticed him looking through some kind of device about the size of the food he made yesterday. Before he climbed back into his seat and started to move the carriage, "I think I have an idea. It'll be a one-time thing, as I am not sure I can even pull it off, but if it works, the gatehouse will be gone. It will also take me a few seconds to a few minutes, as the controls are hard to get to." She looked at him a bit confused for a second. "Are you planning on using one of those giants you made last night?" she asked nervously, and he nodded in return. "Do you have a second suggestion? I think you should save that for something more dangerous than a gatehouse." He frowned but smiled a second after, going back to thinking, "I could just blow it all to Kingdom Come, or maybe—" He spoke aloud as a new idea formed in his head. "It will take me a few minutes to get ready when we get there. Also, I am not 100% sure how powerful it will be, so I am going to use a weaker version. It should work out then, I think." She wasn't sure what he had planned, but as soon as they reached their destination, they both climbed out, and she walked straight up to her aunt's table where she was having a morning meal with others, and very proudly declared, "Are your troops ready for an assault? I and my summoned warrior are about to fell the gatehouse." Her aunt looked a fair bit like her mother, but younger by about 10 years, her blue-tinted skin already starting to shift to a duller color, and her hair no longer waving with her emotions as much, her 4 deep yellow eyes watching her with annoyance on her face. "My ungrateful niece, what are you doing here so soon? I hadn't even informed my captains of your departure from Shreki," she said before wiping away at her mouth and leaning back. "Our queen had ordered me and my summoned warrior to come and aid in your efforts. My warrior is preparing as we speak to breach and destroy the West Gatehouse and open a path for your forces. I suggest you get ready," Leani said back before turning and walking away, getting a few steps before she felt her aunt's magic tugging at her to return, but she powered through it. Getting back outside, she was a bit stunned as Jason was in what she could finally call a suit of armor. It was black as a moonless night, with a backpack and boxes attached that extended over his shoulders a bit. He seemed to be testing it a bit. Then he summoned 2 new items. One was about half his height and shoulder width wide and was made of some kind of metal, which he set on the ground carefully. The other was about the size of a pen, with a red cap at the top of it. He looked up to her. "So, are her troops ready?" he asked with a smile. Leani shook her head. "No, she probably thinks that I was jesting, not that it matters. Are you ready?" she said before reaching out and feeling the chest plate. It was not metal, but something else, still hard and rigid but warm to the touch. "Also, what are you planning?" Jason gave her a wide smile. "So, the thing I am wearing is called a lightning magic armor. It will allow me to get on top of the gatehouse. There I will place this." He patted the box. "This is best described as a explosive ward spell, but instead of exploding, it's going to use spatial magic to take the gatehouse and everything in it to the Ethereum Sea, and you get to pull the trigger." He handed her the pen device. "When I come back down, you just press the red bit and goodbye to the gatehouse. I had to do some guesswork on how far the explosive ward spell should cover, but if I guessed wrong, then the troops will have a bit of a smooth bowl to cross, or a bit of the gatehouse to climb over." She had no idea what the lower planes he even meant by all of that, but smiled just before she heard her aunt finally come out of the tent and walk over. "My niece, you are not in charge here." Her aunt started before Jason stepped in the way. His head was suddenly enclosed by a helmet that appeared out of nowhere, and his voice carried out with an odd crackle to it but clear as day that he was speaking. "I am about to clear a path for you to win this siege. If your army is not ready to press the advantage, the Queen will hear of this, and I will make sure she hears in great detail the ineptitude and lack of discipline of your forces. But most of all, I will make sure she knows that the reason this siege was not won this day was that you," he pushed a gauntlet finger into her face, "are a self-aggrandizing failure of a duchess who, rather than end the suffering of her people, casually ate while your troops starved. Do I make myself clear?" Leani looked in shock. Such a display of challenge to her aunt left her aunt and many others stunned. As someone started to reach for a sword, one of the boxes on his back opened, and a battle staff of some kind came out and swiveled on a metal limb towards the knight with the weapon. He then spoke up again. "Do I make myself clear?" Her aunt nodded, and he stepped back. Turning to Leani, he held out a hand to her and summoned the ring he made yesterday. "Here, you can keep it in your pocket. It's a ring of cutting without cutting. It will keep you safe until I am back," he said. She looked at the ring for a second before taking it. He then grabbed the box beside her in one arm and summoned a short and boxy battle staff in the other. "Catch you on that bounce, troopers," he said before the backpack along with both of the calves of the suit opened up and threw him skywards on mana flames of powerful energy. As he reached the peak of the tall jump he seemed to take, the other box on his back opened and let loose a short series of pops followed by balls of fire all along the top of the gatehouse, the defenders letting out cries of pain as a few had survived his first attack this time. Then she heard the claps of thunder, but this was odd too as they happen a bit fast, making the sound let out a short-set crackles like when someone invoked lightning magic. She then saw him crouch down. "Humped," her aunt snorted. "Looks like you are still a failure. Your warrior has fallen," she said. But Leani's ears heard something else, and she spun to the carriage. Opening the door, she heard it. "Princess Leani, can you hear me?" Jason's voice called through some kind of magic listening spell in the war carriage. "Well, if you can you please tell your feasel-faced aunt that I have apparently killed the Defender's commander? I am claiming his head. Also, I am coming back. Be ready." She looked up in time to see him again be thrown skywards, but towards them, his battle staff in one hand and a head in the second, slowing his fall with a short burst of mana flames. He landed a bit away, but calmly walked up, taking a knee and holding the head of a Chiantix man to her. "This is their general. His name is Lythardan. He was watching us the second we arrived. I, as a contracted warrior of yours, offer this head as proof of my mission done and only need your act to end this task." Leani looked down to the head. The Chiantix's face was locked in a state of confusion, one of his horns broken off, and black blood pouring a bit out of it, but her eyes moved to her hand. As she held the small device he had handed her, pressing down on the red part, it gave way easily, and then a sound of ripping and tearing started. Her eyes shoot up to the gatehouse, where a massive ball about twice the height of the gatehouse appeared, before vanishing with an audible pop, taking with it everything that has found itself in the ball too, which included some buildings in the city and a good bit of the wall on the left and right sides of where the western gatehouse stood. Leani turned to her aunt with the biggest grin she could form, and to the swordmaster. "This is the power of a ranger of the United States, and he serves me of his own free will. Now end this siege so we may pursue the war," she said before taking the head and turning back to the carriage, climbing inside but leaving the door open. She watched, and the helmet of Jason opened up like it was never there, and he looked over to her aunt. "We will be leaving now. If the city is not the Queen's by day's end, I will return and take over. The gates are open and the enemy is disoriented. Failure now would only bring shame," he said before he walked to the back of the carriage, opening it, and removing the armor in a quick and easy manner that left all the knights and women-at-arms grow purple with envy over the ease the chest plate opened and allowed his to remove it. Then he stood and pushed it back into the rear of the carriage. Then his leg armor did the same, leaving him in just a long-sleeved, skin-tight tunic and the trousers he wore most of the time. Leani lost herself for a second as she noticed the musculature of his chest and arms before she shook her head as he closed the back of the carriage after loading the leg armor and putting his boots on, and walked to his seat in the carriage. Closing her door as he did, the carriage rumbled to life and he started to move it, taking them away from the siege camp and back towards her mother. "So how was it that I could hear your voice when you were on the gatehouse?" she finally asked once they crossed over the hill. "Oh, that would be because of this." He pounded a hand at the odd-looking black box with wires all over it. Then he picked up a piece that was a bit boxed, yet rounded with a grate over a part of one side and a protruding black piece out the side. "For next time, if you hold this," he pressed down on the black part, "you will be able to talk back to me. This way, even if I am on a mission, you can talk with me." "How far can this talking magic work?" she asked. I am not sure, but for the next half a year we are going to be mainly in Shrekky to train troops, so I think we can test that over one of those days, he said back calmly, not certain about the next few days and weeks. She smiled. Thank you, by the way. You did a perfect job, but there is something I don't get. Jason glanced her way with a cocked brow. A signal she learned was a simple confirmation of his willingness to hear what she had to say. Aside from the mana potion and weapons at my people's level, how is it that you can use magic, yet be from a manaless world? Jason seemed to furrow his brow, but she wasn't sure, as reading only half his face meant the other side was missing, but she believed he was thinking of an answer. I guess I get it. In a way, there was a writer in my world that came up with 3 rules for advanced or unbelievable alchemy. His 3rd rule is what I think has you in a pinch. The 3rd rule he made says that any sufficiently advanced alchemy is indistinguishable from magic. To you it is magic, to me it is alchemy, but both things are true while neither of us is wrong. My world doesn't have mana or magic, so we figured it out, tried different things until something worked, then we learned to do that thing over and over until we understood both why and how it happened. Take my battle staff. You think it kills when it makes a thunderclap, right? He asked, and she nodded. Yeah, well no, see the sound it makes is because inside the battle staff is a small explosion that shoots a small piece of metal out at whoever I point it at. It's not the thunder that kills them. It is the metal that punches a hole in them and kills them. She leaned back in her chair and considered this. Could that mean that with enough time and effort her own people could make such weapons too? Wait then, what about that? She said, and pointed to the back where the armor was resting. It used magic to send you into the sky. It almost looked like you were flying. That has to be magic. He turned and smiled, and said one word, once they had established what was or wasn't actually a piece of weaponry or armor of his world. Unknown Dom,